You must have heard about Kubernetes multi-tenancy and you must have heard about vCluster because Kubernetes multi-tenancy and vCluster goes hand in hand. So over the past few years, vCluster has dominated the Kubernetes multi-tenancy space. Everybody is using vCluster for creating separate virtual clusters. But there is one thing that is always needed, which is the host Kubernetes cluster. You might have seen my previous videos or any other video on vCluster YouTube channel where you have seen that you need to have a host cluster and then you can divide the cluster into multiple virtual clusters and give them to your team. So every Kubernetes operation starts with a host Kubernetes cluster. It can be K3s, EKS, GKE, Talos, or whatever distribution you like. But managing the host cluster and the virtual clusters obviously includes separate steps. It includes separate vendors, separate upgrade paths, and also different operational processes for different teams. And many of our customers and open source community has always told, is there a way where we can avoid this host cluster, or we can have some sort of integration so that the host cluster is also there and we have a single vendor vCluster that can manage everything, like a single developer experience, a single tool, single CLI vCluster for the entire multi-tenancy spectrum. Over the past few months, we have launched a series of features from private nodes to auto nodes, that is Carpenter baked in for every Kubernetes clusters. And now with vCluster 029, I'm super excited to announce the vCluster standalone. This is the next step and the final one in the multi-tenancy spectrum, and is a way to bootstrap a Kubernetes cluster directly on any VM or bare metal machine without needing an existing host cluster. So to reiterate, the multi-tenancy spectrum going from traditional namespaces to shared nodes, virtual nodes, dedicated nodes using namespace selector, then private nodes, auto nodes, standalone vCluster. So I think that whole multi-tenancy spectrum is now covered by a single tool, vCluster, and that's the only tool out there in the ecosystem today that can do all the parts in the multi-tenancy spectrum. So vCluster standalone is free to use. I'll show that just in a second how you can use and get started with vCluster standalone today. And on top of the standalone, you can create regular virtual clusters. So you'll be able to have your host cluster as a vCluster, which is a vCluster standalone, and then you'll be able to create the virtual clusters on top of that. So no more other distributions of Kubernetes is now needed as a host cluster. So your vCluster standalone is your host cluster. So let's see that in action. So I have this mini LAN Ubuntu playground. It has 4 Ubuntu nodes that are connected together. So it has nothing right now. These are plain Ubuntu instances. And this is Eximius Labs. So you can try that out on your own as well. So what I'll do here is very simple curl command from 029. Obviously, this feature is introduced in vCluster version 029. There is in the releases section, if you go to the GitHub releases page, there is install standalone.sh. So I'm just running that. Nothing I have done yet. So I'm just running this on one of the Ubuntu instances in this mini LAN Ubuntu playground. And it will do all the steps step by step. So it is downloading the vCluster binary. The vCluster CLI is also installed in varlib vCluster. So you don't need to have any other thing. It is starting a vCluster service as a system D. It is creating a system D service file, vCluster.service. So you can see creating vCluster system D service. And now vCluster is initializing the control plane. And during the initialization, the standalone cluster is having all the essential components like API server, embedded etcd, kube controller manager, and scheduler. So the system obviously automatically install kubectl. It has CoreDNS for service discovery, kube proxy for network routing, Flannel as the default CNI. So all these things are baked in. So you can see vCluster is ready to use. What we can do is kubectl get pods -a, and we can see all the pods are up and running. So you have Flannel, you have CoreDNS, you have connectivity agent, you have kube proxy, and you also have a local path provisioner so that when you provision the PVCs, it automatically works. kubectl get sc. You also have a local path as a default storage class. So it gives you the bare bones by default. Now, this is free to use. This is something that you can immediately start using. It also has vCluster CLI, so you can just use this. So what we'll do now is we'll move var lib vCluster bin vCluster CLI to slash user local bin vCluster. So vCluster, you can see vCluster is working. Now we'll create a token. What that means is this is right now kubectl get node. So you have a single node cluster. And this is obviously for good for development purposes and stuff. So what you can do is vCluster token create expires 1 hour. It gives you a token. What I need to do now is copy this, go to node 2, clear, and paste here. Go to node 3, paste here. Go to node 4 and paste here. So what it is doing is it is downloading all the binaries that are needed, and just like you do kubeadm init, that was happening on the node 1, and kubeadm join, that is happening over here. Now if I come back and do kubectl get nodes, boom, I have a 4 node Kubernetes cluster with me. Now this is something that I can use to create my virtual clusters on, and you can see I am able to run anything on this. For example, kubectl run nginx hyphen hyphen image nginx. Okay, pod is created. kubectl get pods. It's working fine. Now let's create a virtual cluster just like we do. vCluster create demo. Now it is creating a virtual cluster inside the vCluster standalone. Try to understand this. It is creating a virtual cluster inside vCluster standalone. These were plain Ubuntu nodes. There was no Kubernetes cluster. We are using vCluster standalone as the host cluster, and now we are creating the vCluster inside the vCluster standalone. This is consolidation of the entire stack. That's why it is important. So it solves the cluster one problem, which is very important. So you don't need to have OpenShift, K3s, or anything to host vClusters. And standalone eliminates this by running directly on the bare metal or the VMs. Meanwhile, this is happening. I want to show you one configuration file, demo.yaml. Now, whatever I did was manually. So in 028, we launched something which is called auto nodes, including the private nodes. What that means? That means that this particular portion is first like I'm enabling standalone, and I'm making sure that standalone itself is able to run those workloads. But when you have additional worker nodes, you need private nodes enabled. Now, when you have these private node enabled, you can do something like auto nodes. So auto nodes is basically Carpenter baked in. So you don't need to have these join token commands and run them. The private nodes, the auto nodes can directly create the nodes on a specific cloud provider and join them to this particular host cluster whenever required. Now you can see that the vCluster is up and running, and we are here. It should actually change the context. So kubectl get pods hyphen a. Yes, this is the virtual cluster context. Now I'm inside the virtual cluster. kubectl run nginx hyphen hyphen image nginx. That's how cool it is. kubectl get pods. So definitely you can go for vCluster standalone today, try it out for free. And whenever you want to go for HA control plane, you can go for the enterprise version. And the defaults are CodeDNS, proxy, Flannel. Alternate CNIs are supported with config. and you can run the platform on standalone, create and manage virtual cluster on top using the CLI or the vCluster platform. And in future, we are planning to integrate sleep mode, snapshot PV, CIS hardening, extending OS hardening, and so much more. So I'm really excited about this because this puts vCluster as the fundamental base layer technology. Now, when you get bare metal machines, you get vCluster standalone. On top of that, you have auto nodes with Carpenter functionality, and you create virtual clusters like anything on top of the vCluster standalone. So this vCluster standalone today is solving the cluster one problem. I would really like to know your thoughts on vCluster standalone. Let me know in the comment section if you are excited as I am for vCluster standalone. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to vCluster and join our future live streams. Do press the bell icon and keep supporting vCluster.